Okay, so I wanted to do a video right now. The Democratic convention is live, and let's check it.
In November, when we will elect Joe Biden president, whose heart is full of love for America, and rid the country of Trump's heartless disregard for America's goodness. Joe Biden's faith in God gives him the courage to lead. Joe Biden's love gives him the strength to persevere. Joe Biden is the president we need right now, battle-tested, forward-looking, honest, and authentic. He has never forgotten who he is fighting for. And Kamala Harris is the vice president we need right now, committed to our Constitution, brilliant in defending it, and a witness to the women of this nation that our voices will be heard. Our mission is to fight for a future equal to the ideals of our founders, our hopes for our children, and the sacrifices of our veterans, our brave men and women in uniform, and their families. We'll increase our majority in the House. We will win a Democratic majority in the Senate. We will elect Kamala Harris vice president, and we will elect Joe Biden president of the United States of America. God bless you, and God bless America.
Thank you, Speaker Pelosi. The House is the people's house, and to ensure it stays that way, we need everyone to help fund our work to elect Joe Biden and Democrats up and down the ballot. If you are able, please go to joebiden.com now and chip in whatever you can to support this campaign. Last year, under Speaker Pelosi's leadership, the House reauthorized the Violence Against Women Act. Joe Biden wrote that landmark law nearly 30 years ago. Since then, he and other leaders have built on it. But for all of this work, women are still not entirely safe. So the work must continue. Joe Biden knows that, and he is committed to doing that work, to making sure that women are safe and to making sure our voices are heard. Let's listen.
My name is Ruth Glenn. In 1992, my husband shot me and left me for dead. For 13 years, my son and I had been abused by him. We finally escaped, but he tracked us down.
What I'm waiting for is Obama. That's what I'm waiting for. Oh my gosh. Phony baloney to the bitter end. Okay, I'll get lost in the comments, but I wanted to see.
It's on us. It's a program started by Vice President Biden to eliminate
one person's reactions. Could be. Is this for New York Times Maggie? All aboard the Trump train. Let's look into some.
Trump will not be president.
Highly critical, biased text messages between senior FBI officials Peter Strzok and Lisa Page.
There will be no question about the outcome of this election.
And she got ahead of herself. This utterly stunned this campaign.
Head home. You should get some sleep. We'll have more to say tomorrow.
Our constitutional democracy enshrines the peaceful transfer of power.
The peaceful transition of power is one of the hallmarks of our democracy. We want to do everything we can to help you succeed, because if you succeed, then the country succeeds.
These declassified documents that were just released.
Officials in the Obama administration were asking for the identities to be unmasked of Americans.
Unmasking of aides and staffers of the incoming president.
The basic charge, political spying.
To disrupt the peaceful transfer of power.
Unmasking of American citizens. It could be a real problem.
Why is it that the unmasking of Flynn somehow ended up in the pages of the Washington Post?
I know nothing about those moves to investigate Michael Flynn.
The vice president said that yesterday, and then the last name on this list is Joe Biden.
The Obama administration was bitter. They wanted to do everything they could to undermine the incoming Trump administration.
Really designed to sabotage and really upend the new administration.
An outgoing president and a vice president and a Washington Post columnist and the FBI setting up an incoming administration. Wow, that's a real conspiracy, and nobody wants to talk about it.
'72 said, watch Mary's body language at the DNC tonight. And that's what I'm trying to see if I can. Oops. Study.
His leadership on this.
If you see something wrong, we were then expected to stand up and do something about it.
As you can see, the focus right now at this convention on an issue that Joe Biden has spent a number of years working on, violence against women. He was one of the principal sponsors of the Violence Against Women Act, and you saw one of those hearings just a moment ago. They are taking a few minutes now as they transition to a look at the economy, and we're going to go back to the convention when they do that. But right now, for just the next few minutes, I want to go to our analyst to talk about what we are hearing. Michael Nutter, former mayor of Philadelphia, Chris Buskirk.
Okay, so let's go ahead and read while they are transitioning, I guess. So there was an article that I really liked, but it might be a little long. So we'll just talk about QAnon. Today, POTUS was asked the question, and this is his response.
We'll take some questions. Yeah, please.
During the pandemic, the QAnon movement appears to be gaining a lot of followers. Can you talk about what you think about that and what you have to say to people who are following this movement right now?
Well, I don't know much about the movement other than I understand they like me very much, which I appreciate. But I don't know much about the movement. I have heard that it is gaining in popularity, and from what I've heard, these are people that when they watch the streets of Portland, when they watch what happened in New York City in just the last 6 or 7 months, but this was starting even 4 years ago when I came here. Almost 4 years, can you believe it? These are people that don't like seeing what's going on in places like Portland and places like Chicago and New York and other cities and states. And I've heard these are people that love our country and they just don't like seeing it. So I don't know really anything about it other than they do supposedly like me, and they also would like to see problems in these areas, like especially the areas that we're talking about, go away, because there's no reason the Democrats can't run a city. And if they can't, we will send in all of the federal, whether it's troops or law enforcement, whatever they'd like, we'll send them in, we'll straighten out their problem in 24 hours or less, okay?
At the crux of the theory is this belief that you are secretly saving the world from this satanic cult of pedophiles and cannibals. Does that sound like something you are behind? Or
Well, I haven't heard that, but is that supposed to be a bad thing or a good thing? I mean, you know, if I can help save the world from problems, I'm willing to do it. I'm willing to put myself out there, and we are actually. We're saving the world from a radical left philosophy that will destroy this country, and when this country is gone, the rest of the world would follow. The rest of the world would follow. That's the importance of this country.
If America falls, the whole world will follow. Boom. Today, Durham former FBI lawyer Kevin Kleinsmith pleads guilty, 1 count false statements, but key exchange goes to intent. Judge Boasberg, did you understand this document before you signed it? Kleinsmith, I did, Your Honor. Maybe tonight Hillary will expand on just how her husband used the command center.
It's a great feeling to have closed up the border. Now people come in, if they come in through merit, if they come in legally, but they don't come in like they used to. And human trafficking is, I think we're down 96% or something. It's been incredible. It's a great feeling to have
96%. All right.
Being an African American female business owner under President Trump, I feel, how can I say, I'm alone. I'm alone.
This is the story of Lynn Ta.
Okay. There should be a law that holds all news channels accountable for lying, twisting the truth, and withholding information to the public. We wouldn't have a media if that was to happen. Right off the bat, Crooked Hillary mentions the so-called Biden pandemic playbook supposedly left for real Donald Trump. I've read the playbook, which mentions the China-led WHO dozens of times. Rely on China is not a strategy, no matter what Crooked and Sleepy say. That is true. So now the DNC is running an infomercial on sexual abuse and violence against women at a convention? Is this their way of apologizing for Bill Clinton? Alright, this is my last time. I'm going to check if Obama's on. No, but Senator Warren is.
Keep going.
Tonight, we've heard from the people who make America work, people who put their lives on the line to keep our country going, and since COVID-19 hit, they've taken one gut punch after another. And what has the COVID fallout done to our babies? Well, I'm here at the Early Childhood Education Center in Springfield, Massachusetts, which has been closed for months. Childcare was already hard to find before the pandemic, and now parents are stuck. No idea when schools can safely reopen, and even fewer
Okay, well, you know what? I'm just going to read because I wanted to do an article read. I saved it right here. And this is a really, really good article. Crossfire Hurricane was never a counterintelligence investigation by Jim Casey, August 17th, 2020. James Comey said it in March of 2017. Robert Mueller said it in March of 2019. DOJ Inspector General Michael Horowitz said it again in December of 2019, and Sally Yates repeated it last week in her Senate Judiciary hearing testimony. In 2016, the FBI initiated a counterintelligence investigation involving the Trump campaign. These are honorable men and women with long careers serving their country, and yet while we await a full accounting from United States Attorney John Durham, who is investigating the origins of Russian collusion, the FBI investigation, codenamed Crossfire Hurricane, and the ensuing Mueller report was never a real counterintelligence investigation. Counterintelligence, or CI, is a dark art of foreign policy, diplomacy by other means. Countries engage in intelligence collection in several ways, one of which is with an external security service like CIA in the U.S. and MI6, or more formally, the Secret Intelligence Service in the UK. These services dispatch officers, not agents, as is often misdescribed, overseas to collect intelligence from assets or agents used correctly in this vein. In a clandestine manner, the intelligence is sent back to a headquarters component where it is analyzed and put into reporting products for policymakers like the President, NSC, and the Secretaries of State and Defense here in the U.S. Adversaries like the Russians do the same thing. Counterintelligence, as this name implies, seeks to thwart the efforts of external intelligence agencies engaged in these intelligence operations. In the U.S., the FBI has the primary CI mission for identifying and obstructing foreign intelligence services seeking to collect against U.S. interests. Like foreign intelligence, CI is primarily for the use of policymakers, not policemen and prosecutors. Just like their siblings in foreign intelligence services, CIA services produce CI products for policymakers to shape their decision making with foreign governments and leaders. With one notable exception, counterintelligence has nothing to do with criminal investigations. That exception is espionage, which many practitioners will tell you represent the height of a counterintelligence failure. The FBI agent turned spy for Russia is the classic case of a counterintelligence failure because for years the FBI failed to stop the Russians from collecting intelligence against the U.S. by using one of their own FBI agents against them. In a perfect world, the FBI would have seen the efforts to recruit Hansen, or Hansen would have self-reported he was potentially being recruited, which was unlikely since we know Hansen volunteered to the Russians, and the FBI would have turned him into a double agent against them and fed them false information through Hansen. Instead, it was a massive counterintelligence failure, and Hansen was prosecuted for espionage. With that as a backdrop, let's examine how Crossfire Hurricane was never a real counterintelligence investigation. There are several dates to focus on, so let's start with the first of several known events. In 2013, the FBI used Carter Page as a source of information to help identify potential Russian intelligence officers who were eventually expelled. This is significant because while by all accounts Page is a quirky guy, he would have immediately been flagged by any competent foreign intelligence service as someone who helped his own counterintelligence service identify and expel their foreign intelligence officer. We now know from IG Michael Horowitz's report and the Durham indictment of FBI lawyer Kevin Klansmith this week that Page was considered a contact of the CIA. He would never be trusted to become an asset or recruited agent of a foreign intelligence service who knew that first fact, like the Russians. It was reported in July 2016 that the computer servers belonging to the Democratic National Committee, DNC, had been breached and several sensitive communications may have been compromised. The breaches likely happened in 2015 and April of 2016. Later, it would be alleged the Russian intelligence services were responsible for the breach, and the Mueller team would go on to charge several Russian intelligence officers with crimes related to that breach. The next suspicious event was a March 14, 2016 meeting between George Papadopoulos, who had recently been named a Trump campaign advisor, and Joseph Misfit in Rome. Much remains unknown about Misfit today, but allegedly during this meeting, Misfit told Papadopoulos the Russians had derogatory information on then Democratic candidate Hillary Clinton. The Mueller report claimed Misfit had contact with Russians, but there is at least as much or more information in other reporting that he may have worked for Western intelligence services. We will no doubt learn more from Durham, but it is safe to say Misfit was not an intelligence officer of any country himself. Then Papadopoulos had drinks in London with Alexander Downer, a senior Australian diplomat, in May of 2016. At this meeting with Downer, Papadopoulos is alleged to have repeated the Misfit information about the Russians having dirt on Hillary Clinton. Downer was also not an intelligence officer. Next on the timeline, Christopher Steele, a former British foreign intelligence officer, called an FBI contact of his who was assigned to the U.S. Embassy in Rome about information he had developed on candidate Trump. He said he had found it troubling and that he wanted to pass it along to the Bureau. This meeting with the FBI occurred in London on July 5, 2016. The last important event on this timeline was when FBI Deputy Assistant Director for Counterintelligence Peter Strzok traveled to London to follow up on the Downer-Papadopoulos meeting and returned to FBI headquarters. Then, on July 31, 2016, he authored an opening electronic communication, EC, titled Crossfire Hurricane, allegedly predicated on the Papadopoulos Downer meeting. The FBI maintains, and there is no evidence to the contrary, that despite a lot of happening in London during this time frame, the still information provided to the Rome-based FBI agent in London was unknown to Stroh and his team until several months later. This information would later become known as the Steele dossier and is the topic of a future article. This opening EC was captioned by Stroh as a FARA violation, or Foreign Agents Registration Act, which is a criminal investigation worked by the FBI, though it is often worked on counterintelligence squads. It alleges that a foreign source that we now know is Downer met with Papadopoulos, and at that meeting there was allegedly the discussion about the Russians having information embarrassing to Clinton and Obama. The EC also puts this into the context of the DNC hack, which of course the Bureau already knew about. It was they themselves who reached out to the DNC on several occasions many months before to warn of a potential breach, and they made contact days before it was made public, so the Bureau knew about a DNC hack, presumably by Russia. They heard via their agent assigned to London that Papadopoulos told Downer the Russians had dirt on Hillary Clinton, and they drew a straight line between the two events, and they also opened a FARA violation investigation on Papadopoulos. By calling it a FARA violation, Stroh was alleging Papadopoulos was acting as an agent of a foreign country without properly registering with the Department of Justice, something he never said in the EC. By calling it a FARA violation, Stroh was alleging Papadopoulos was acting as an agent of a foreign country without properly registering with the Department of Justice, something he never said in the EC. Wow. Importantly, Stroh did not title or allege in the communication that Papadopoulos was the subject of an espionage investigation, nor did he designate the communication in a manner alleging he was acting on behalf of a foreign intelligence power against the United States, which he could have done if that's what he thought. There are specific FBI classifications available to code and FBI communication to indicate what country is the subject of the investigation. Within weeks, Stroh would open 3 other sub-files to Crossfire Hurricane. He opened on Trump campaign manager Paul Manafort, Foreign Policy Advisor Carter Page, and National Security Advisor Michael Flynn. The fact that Downer was a member of a friendly foreign government gave Stroh cover to classify the documents secret, because such deliberations with foreign partners are always classified. Again, this was still not and never actually became a counterintelligence investigation. It is important to understand 2 things about FARA. First, the word agent is not used as a pejorative in the same manner as it is for the purposes of the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act, FISA. In FISA, being an agent of a foreign power means you are alleged to be an intelligence or terrorism threat to the United States. In other words, a bad guy. Later, we will see the FBI got a FISA warrant for Carter Page's communications, alleging he was an agent of a foreign power, Russia. This was based almost solely on the Steele dossier, which turned out to be bogus. With FARA, an agent is more akin to Tom Brady or Taylor Swift having agents, simply somebody who reps for you. K Street in Washington, D.C. is filled with lobbyists who rep for all sorts of entities, including foreign governments. If you register as required by the statute, it is perfectly legal to be a foreign agent. If you register. The second point is that FARA is a complicated statute with many requirements and just as many workarounds. Most of these K Street lobbyists do not and have never registered with DOJ as foreign agents when representing other governments. even though arguably in many cases they should, especially if they're receiving donations. Violations of FARA have only been successfully prosecuted 7 times in the almost 60-year history of the Institute. Calling Crossfire Hurricane a FARA violation in the title of the opening communication literally meant Stroh considered the targets to be in violation of the act requiring them to register with DOJ as foreign agents and not necessarily counterintelligence threats. So while the Bureau and most of the intelligence community professed much later to have a concern the government of Russia was attempting to affect the outcome of the 2016 presidential election by using these 4 subjects, there's zero evidence in Stroh opening EC on July 31st, 2016 that was the case. A significant missing element of an actual CI case here is any known activity by real foreign intelligence officers. As noted above, even if MISFID was being run by the Russians, a sophisticated intelligence service would never delegate the recruitment of a potential asset, Papadopoulos, to another low-level asset agent, MISFID. The same would be true for Manafort Page, who we already said would never be a candidate for recruitment, and Flynn. Nowhere, with the notable exception of the Mueller team indicting several Russian GRU officers for the hack of the DNC server long before they took over the investigation from the FBI, has there been evidence of actual foreign intelligence officers involved in Crossfire Hurricane. Another characteristic of an actual counterintelligence investigation that never existed in CH was access to sensitive or classified intelligence by the alleged subjects. For a foreign intelligence service to be successful, they need to recruit spies with access to classified information. Although Flynn still had a top-secret clearance, he was mostly involved in commercial ventures with his own consulting firm, and none of the other 3 had clearances of access of any kind. One could argue that if Trump were to win, these 4 would have future access to classified intelligence. While this is potentially true, recall we have been credibly told all along that the goal of the Russian government was to get Trump their preferred candidate elected, not recruit spies. How would any of the alleged activities by Papadopoulos, Page, Manafort, or Flynn, if they were being tasked or controlled by the Russian intelligence services, have contributed towards success in getting Trump elected? If the Russians already had dirt on Hillary Clinton, how does using a low-level agent, MISFID, telling Papadopoulos about this contribute toward their goals? How does using a low-level agent, MISFID, telling Papadopoulos about this contribute toward their goals? It is not unforeseeable somebody like Papadopoulos might tell somebody like Downer, who might be friendly to the United States and who might warn them. Of course, this is exactly what happened. The safer play would have been to keep quiet and make the dirt public at a time when you think it can do the most damage to Clinton. Manafort was alleged to be involved in shady business deals with Russians and Ukrainians. Flynn was merely alleged to have traveled to Moscow, a meeting he reported to the Department of Defense, and we've talked about how useless it would be to recruit Page. How is any of this helpful toward Russia's goal of getting Trump elected? Another important point to consider is how the subject of this investigation were handled once they came into the orbit of the FBI and the special counsel. As we noted, a classic technique of counterintelligence is to turn potentially recruited agents against the foreign service that is attempting to recruit them for the purposes of planting false intelligence. In this case, the FBI and the special counsel immediately confronted their targets with a variety of either old white-collar crimes, Manafort, or process crimes like lying to the FBI, Papadopoulos and Flynn, or in this case of Page, who, recall, had previously cooperated with them. They did nothing at all except get a FISA warrant against him. In the case of Papadopoulos, he claims there is evidence the FBI sent an informant or asset now known as Stephen Halper and another informant or undercover government agent allegedly named Azra Turk to meet with him in London in September of 2016. He alleges the meeting was for the purpose of getting him to talk about the election and how the Russians might be involved. According to Papadopoulos, the approach was awkward, with Miss Turk attempting to flirt with him over drinks the night before the three of them met. He says that at the meeting he was questioned very directly about the Russians, to the point where he claims he ended the meeting and was upset at Halper and Turk. In an actual CIA investigation, the FBI would have spent more time assessing Papadopoulos in low-risk settings, not in bars with seductress on an initial meet, rather than treating him as the subject of a criminal case for which they thus far had zero evidence. In the case of Flynn, we know the FBI conducted an ambush interview of him at the White House on January 24, 2017, after Trump had become president. It was allegedly on the pretext that he had a troubling discussion with the Russians ambassador after the election about sanctions that had been levied on Russia by Barack Obama. By Barack. That's exactly who I'm looking for tonight. We later learned that General Flynn didn't speak about sanctions at all and instead had addressed the expulsion of diplomats. However, Stroh wrote in notes taken after a January 5, 2017 meeting with a closely held group, including Comey, acting Attorney Generals Yates, and the president, that Comey had characterized Flynn called as legit. 3 weeks later, the day before the FBI interviewed Flynn, Assistant Director Bill Priestap speculated in his own notes about the goals of the interview, which included getting Flynn to lie for the purposes of prosecuting him or getting him fired. FBI and DOJ officials, including Yates, mused about charging Flynn with a violation of the Logan Act, a little-known and probably unconstitutional law that makes it illegal for private citizens to negotiate with foreign governments. When the interview and the ensuing prosecution of Flynn by Mueller's team for lying to the FBI fell apart a year later, defenders, including Yates, in a recent hearing defaulted back to the counterintelligence concerns about Flynn's phone call as the predicate for the interview. Finally, the best evidence: the FBI never had a legitimate counterintelligence investigation with Crossfire Hurricane was then Director Comey's testimony in front of Congress on March 20, 2017, where he said he had been authorized by the Department of Justice to announce that the FBI had initiated a counterintelligence investigation on the Trump campaign, one with everything we have just described about the nature, purpose, and goals of counterintelligence investigations. Why in the world would the head of an internal security service officially announce a counterintelligence investigation? The very acknowledgement that you are countering an intelligence operation of your enemy tells the enemy the jig is up and their operation is over. Besides, if the goal of the Russians was to help elect Trump, as we have been told by the intelligence community that had already happened 4 months earlier, what intelligence was Comey countering by announcing this investigation? The phrase counterintelligence investigation in the context of Crossfire Hurricane has always been a euphemism for criminal investigation light, in the same way former Attorney General Loretta Lynch instructed Comey to refer to the Clinton email criminal investigation as a matter. The target of the investigation was always Donald Trump, because we have pointed out there is no credible evidence of any of the 4 alleged subjects of CH did anything wrong from a counterintelligence perspective. None. A worse optic is that this was a political investigation targeting an unconventional presidential candidate who nobody thought would win. When he did, the race was on for the FBI to justify what they had done, and as Comey later admitted, get a special counsel appointed. Because who among us, much less a real estate developer from New York with a history of bankruptcies and business failures, could survive a rogues gallery of savvy federal prosecutors looking for evidence of any crimes? As it turns out, Trump survived that investigation too. Crossfire Hurricane was a lot of things, but an actual counterintelligence investigation was not one of them.
Farmers losing their dreams to dust. Irish and Italians and Asians and Latinos told, go back where you come from. Jews and Catholics, Muslims and Sikhs made to feel suspect for the way they worshiped. Black Americans chained and whipped and hanged, spit on for trying to sit at lunch counters, beaten for trying to vote. If anyone had a right to believe that this democracy did not work and could not work, it was those Americans, our ancestors. They were on the receiving end of a democracy that had fallen short all their lives. They knew how far the daily reality of America strayed from the myth. And yet, instead of giving up, they joined together. And they said, somehow, some way, we are going to make this work. We are going to bring those words in our founding documents to life. I have seen that same spirit rising these past few years. Folks of every age and background who packed city centers and airports and rural roads so that families wouldn't be separated, so that another classroom wouldn't get shot up, so that our kids won't grow up on an uninhabitable planet. Americans of all races joining together to declare, in the face of injustice and brutality at the hands of the state, that Black Lives Matter. No more, but no less. So that no child in this country feels the continuing sting of racism. To the young people who led us this summer, telling us we need to be better, in so many ways, you are this country's dreams fulfilled. Earlier generations had to be persuaded that everyone has equal worth. For you, it's a given, a conviction. And what I want you to know is that for all its messiness and frustrations, your system of self-government can be harnessed to help you realize those convictions for all of us. You can give our democracy new meaning. You can take it to a better place. You're the missing ingredient. The ones who will decide whether or not America becomes the country that fully lives up to its creed. That work will continue long after this election. But any chance of success depends entirely on the outcome of this election. This administration has shown it will tear our democracy down if that's what it takes for them to win. So we have to get busy building it up by pouring all our efforts into these 76 days and by voting like never before for Joe and Kamala and candidates up and down the ticket so that we leave no doubt about what this country that we love stands for today and for all our days to come. Stay safe. God bless.
Why did he refuse to endorse Slow Joe until it was all over, and even then was very late? Why did he try to get him not to run? It's a valid question. You know what? I would be really mad. I would be really mad too. And I was really mad for a while. But Patriots are in control. Look who it is. Ask yourself a very simple question. Why is everything regarding Q being censored, banned, and attacked? When do you expend ammunition, resources? Epstein Island. Who owns the surrounding islands? Close proximity. Unique skill sets of Maxwell. Submarine pilot. That's highly unusual. Helicopter pilot. What benefit might that serve? A mule? Financial Bounty Hunters USA. That's where I got the article that I just read. Remember, under President Obama, there was no Inspector General for State Department, while Hillary Clinton was Secretary of State and had direct control over the purse strings of USAID. The Clinton Foundation had over 900 engagements with USAID during HRC's tenure. Spare me, Barack Hussein Obama. For real. Let's check on Q. That's probably all the Patriots trying to get on. I'll just hang out over here. Okay, new drip drops and video which was leaked about Ghislaine Maxwell and her having a submarine license and how that may be helpful to her and her former puppet Epstein.
Ghislaine Maxwell is founder and president of the Terra Mara Project, a nonprofit whose mission is to create a global ocean community to protect and promote sustainable development of the ocean. Ghislaine is easily one of the smartest, most fascinating people I've ever met. This is proven by the fact that she holds a bachelor's and master's degree from Oxford University, is a private helicopter pilot, a trained EMT, a qualified ROV, which I had to look up what that was, and a deep worker submarine pilot, in addition to being fluent in 4 languages. This is what I had written down before I realized that she spoke at the UN 9 times since the last time I saw her. So with that, I'd like to welcome Ghislaine Maxwell.
Thank you. Excellent. Good afternoon. I noticed that my speech today was leveraging technology to create a global ocean community. I'm going to change that on you, and I'm going to leverage technology to create a new country.
A new country? Wow. Everything Q is being blocked because we're over the target. Deep State doesn't like that much. And that's a wrap. Peace.